Mini's first attempt at building a fully electric car was a little bit mixed, to be honest. Yes, it was pretty fast and it had a lovely interior, but the range was frankly pathetic and it couldn't charge up very quickly. Well, this is attempt number 2. It's the brand new Mini Electric, and although the weather might make you think we're in Wales or Scotland, we are in fact in Barcelona to drive it for the very first time. In this video, I'm going to be telling you everything you need to know about this brand new small electric car, including what it does better than its predecessor and what it doesn't do as well. So stay watching and remember to subscribe to the channel for lots more new car reviews, reveals and road trips. So let's start with the styling, because if that isn't the number one reason you're thinking about buying a Mini, then it's certainly going to be up there. And really there's been no massive revolution on that front. Ever since the original new Mini was first launched back in 2001, every subsequent generation has been a pretty conservative evolution. And when you consider how successful this car has been in the sales charts, then that's not really a surprise, is it? So you've still got these enormous circular headlights, and although there's a more distinctive octagonal shape around the grille, you're probably going to have to do a double take to make sure you're looking at this new version rather than the previous generation car. But actually, when you come around to the side, there are some more significant changes. So the black plastic wheel arch trim, that's been a Mini design trait over the past 23 years. That has gone completely. The repeater for the indicator is now housed in the door mirror, and the door handles are flush as well. On top of that, there is no chrome trim on the outside of the car at all. There's none on the inside as well. And that is part of Mini's design language for this car, which is called charismatic simplicity. The rear end is a bit more distinctive as well, mainly because the taillights are now triangular in shape. But as I say, in the grand scheme of things, pretty small changes. Even for people who know absolutely nothing about cars at all, they're going to know straight away you bought a Mini. What about size? Well, we're used to seeing manufacturers make cars bigger and bigger with each generation. And when you consider the name of this car, that's something that has come in for a fair amount of criticism over the years. So the original BMW Mini of 2001, that absolutely dwarfed the 1959 Alec Izagonis design. And since then, it's grown by another 20 centimeters in length. But if you think the Mini is in danger of being not very mini anymore, then you will at least be pleased to hear that it hasn't got any bigger. Well, not significantly anyway, it's about a centimetre longer. There is, however, a significantly bigger gap between the front and the rear wheels, so the wheelbase is now longer, and that should at least help give it more space inside. Now, Mini's model lineup used to be very straightforward. There was the hatchback, you could have that with a petrol engine or an electric motor, and then there was a small estate called the Clubman and a small SUV called the Countryman. Now things are rather more complicated. So there's this new electric Mini, and that is called the Mini Cooper E, or in this case, the Mini Cooper SE, because it's the more powerful version. So Cooper used to mean a Mini with a bit more power or more standard equipment. Now it's part of the model name. The confusing thing is, there is another Mini Cooper as well. It looks very similar to this car on the outside and on the inside as well, actually, but it is completely unrelated. And it's actually effectively a heavy facelift of the previous generation car. That is available with a choice of 2 petrol engines. If you go for the entry-level car, that's called the Mini Cooper C. The more powerful version is called the Mini Cooper S. Are you still with me? If so, and you need a bit more space, then there is a new Mini Countryman as well. That's available with a choice of petrol engines, and there's an electric version as well. And because the Clubman estate, that's been dropped, there is a new small SUV called the Aceman. That slots in between the hatchback and the Countryman, and we'll be driving that later on this spring. So this looks pretty similar to the new petrol-powered Mini Cooper, but as I said, it is completely different underneath. This actually sits on a new electric car platform that's the result of a partnership between BMW and Chinese car maker Great Wall Motors. Now, there were some rumours that this car would sit on the same platform as the GWM Aura 03, also known as the Aura Funky Cat. But BMW has said that isn't the case at all. In fact, apparently the two cars don't share a single part, which is probably a good thing, given that the Aura 03 is a bit rubbish. The new Mini Electric will be built in China, despite the fact it plays on its Britishness a bit with this Union flag shape in the taillight. That's a decision BMW has come in for quite a lot of flack for, because of course the previous generation Mini Electric was built in Oxford. In response, and after a rumoured £75 million sweetener from the UK government, Mini has agreed to move some production of this new electric model back to Oxford from 2026. Now, if you go for the entry-level Cooper E, you'll get a single 181 brake horsepower electric motor driving the front wheels, and that gives a 0-62 time of 7.3 seconds. So it's pretty quick, about the same as the acceleration in a previous generation of Mini Electric. You can actually watch a drag race of that car by clicking the link up the top if you want. If you want more power, then there is this Cooper SE. That has a 215 brake horsepower electric motor, also driving the front wheels, and that drops the 0-62 time down to 6.7 seconds. That is quicker than an Abarth 500e, which Abarth markets as a proper hot hatch. So that's pretty impressive. But if you're thinking, I'm not overly bothered about slightly quicker acceleration, well, that's not the only difference, because going for the SE also gets you a bigger battery. So if you go for a cheaper Cooper E, then the usable capacity of the battery is 36.6 kilowatt hours, and that gives an official range of up to 190 miles. Not especially great by modern electric car standards. All versions of the MG4 and Peugeot E208 can go further, although it's better than the cheapest version of the electric Fiat 500. That can only manage 118 miles on a full charge. This Cooper SE, that has a bigger 49.2 kilowatt hour battery that gives a range of up to 250 miles according to the official figures. That's quite a big difference and will be very useful if you regularly do long journeys. Now, obviously, that extra performance and longer range doesn't come for free. So if you go for the entry-level Cooper E, then the starting price is £30,000, significantly more than the entry-level versions of the MG4 and Vauxhall Corsa Electric, and about the same as a Peugeot E208. This SE pushes the price up by at least £4,500. The starting price of this is £34,500. If you're thinking that extra range would be very handy, but still it's a pretty big price jump, then it's worth knowing that this SE can charge quicker. So it can accept a maximum of 95 kilowatts of charging power. A 10 to 80% top up will take around about the same time in the cheaper Cooper E, but remember, it has a smaller battery, so you'll be adding fewer miles during that time because it can only charge at a maximum of 75 kilowatts. And to be honest, it is a little bit disappointing that the Mini Electric can't charge quicker because yes, it's roughly on a par with the Fiat 500 Electric, but that's been on sale for a few years now. And the MG4 and the Peugeot E208, they can both charge quite a bit faster. Going for the Cooper SE also gets you a level 1 equipment upgrade, which on the entry-level Cooper E costs £2,000 extra. That adds lots of useful kit that you're probably going to want, including adaptive LED headlights, keyless entry, power folding door mirrors, heated seats, and a wireless phone charging pad, plus another important interior upgrade that I'll tell you about later. If you want even more equipment, there are level 2 and level 3 upgrades too, but these push the Mini's price into the territory of bigger premium badged electric cars, including the Volvo EX30, so they're harder to recommend. Typical. Just as we get inside, it pretty much stops raining. But let's have a good look around here because at first glance, there is lots to like. So there's lots of personality in here. This is not a bland grey interior like the one in an MG4, for example. You've got this huge circular display in the middle of the dashboard. That is designed to ape the central speedo in the 1959 original. And there are some toggle switches down here on the center console, and the start button, well, it's not a button anymore, actually. It's this key-shaped thing. You twist that to turn the car on, obviously not start the ignition because it's an electric car, and twist it again to shut everything down. There is also some knitted fabric on the dashboard here and on the tops of the doors. That's grey on this particular car, but you can have it in different colours on different trim levels. And that just, again, adds a little bit of personality to this car and gives you some personalisation options. These straps here, they are another design feature, so you'll find one on the steering wheel, and there's another one up here on the top of the dashboard. Now that isn't just stuck there, that is knitted into the fabric. You wouldn't necessarily know that, but Mini is very keen to point it out. And around these straps you will notice this satin gold effect metal trim. As I said earlier, there is no chrome on the outside of the new Mini, and there's none on the inside either. So now you will see, as I say, this slightly gold effect up there on the dashboard, on the steering wheel, and actually on the door pull and on the speaker grille. It's not all good news though, because unlike the previous generation Mini, which had loads of soft touch interior materials, really classy inside, and generally felt like a more expensive car than it actually was, in here, when you get past the veneer of this knitted fabric on the dashboard and some nice leather on the steering wheel, you do notice that there are quite a few hard plastics in here. So the top of the dashboard, that's all hard. And under the fabric, very obviously hard and unyielding plastic as well. It's all hard around the centre console, and although there is a pattern on the insides of the doors here, when you feel it, it doesn't feel particularly pleasant, to be honest. So that is a shame. But don't forget the previous generation Mini, that was competing against the original Audi A1, which had a brilliant interior. Audi, when it launched the second generation A1, took quite a lot of money out of the interior materials. So Mini is probably thinking, why are we investing all this money in soft touch plastics? None of our rivals are doing that. We can probably save a bit of money on interior materials and not lose too many buyers. So a shame, but understandable at the same time. Driving position is very, very good. Now, we have had some criticisms about the driving position in the new Mini Countryman in right-hand drive versions because the steering wheel has been noticeably offset to the right. We haven't driven a right-hand drive version of the new Mini Electric yet, so we have to reserve judgment until we've tried this car in the UK. But as it stands in left-hand drive form, it's really, really good. So everything lines up, the steering wheel, the seat and the pedals, very well indeed. The seats as well, very supportive, and on this particular version, you get adjustable lumbar support. Now, if you go for the Coupe SE, or you pay extra for the level 1 pack on the entry-level Coupe E, then you'll get this head-up display up here on the dashboard. What that is effectively a piece of Perspex that rises out of the dashboard and displays key information like the speed you're doing, sat-nav directions, things like that. If you go for the entry-level Coupe E and you don't pay extra for the level 1 pack, then you won't get that. So instead you'll have to look across at this central display for information on the speed you're doing and navigation instructions. So it's very similar to the layout in a Tesla, for example, or the Volvo EX30. So not ideal, and it's definitely worth going for the level 1 pack if you're buying the entry-level Coupe E. While we're on this display, it looks pretty impressive, doesn't it? So lots of colour, it's nice and bright, and actually it's quick to respond to, but it is a classic case of style over function because it's not actually that easy to use while you're driving. There's an awful lot going on here, small icons that are difficult to press, and particularly, as I say, when you're driving, it can be quite distracting. It's also far from ideal that Mini has done away with physical aircon controls. So the previous generation Mini, including the electric version, had easy to use buttons and dials for adjusting the air conditioning. This doesn't. They're all on the touchscreen. So if I want to warm things up in here, I have to press that small icon at the edge of the screen and then either press the plus button multiple times or kind of slide my finger up and down. So it's a little bit fiddly and far from ideal, although you can use the voice control function to do that while you're driving along if you don't want to use the screen. Storage, given how small this car is, not too bad at all really. So you've got this enormous tray that stretches all the way from below the dashboard there, right the way back to under the central armrest. And there are 2 cup holders in the front here. There's another one just behind here for rear passengers. There is a fairly small but usable glove box. And although the door bins, they're a little bit narrow, you can easily fit a bottle of water in there, a notepad as I have, and even, if you need, a high-vis jacket. Anyway, while the rain is holding off, I think it's about time we went for a drive. Now, Mini is always keen to talk about how sporty its cars are to drive, goes on about maximum go-kart feel and how much they feel like a go-kart when you're driving along the road. But is that just marketing or is there some truth to it? Well, the previous generation Mini Electric actually flattered to deceive in some respects. So when you were driving at 6, 7 tenths, it felt pretty agile, it had sharp steering, body control was quite good, it stayed upright through the corners. But when you pushed a bit harder, you quickly became aware that the front tyres didn't grip particularly well and they would run wide of where you wanted them to go. This car though is much, much better. So we are on a country road here, I'm driving along fairly quickly and it feels much better balanced front to rear. And that just gives you the confidence to push harder into a corner and trust that the front tyres are going to go where you put them. The fact the steering is accurate, it's direct, certainly helps. It's not the most feelsome steering in the world, but you get enough of a sense of connection with the front wheels to have some fun, and that is the important thing. But if you're wondering what on earth that noise is, that is part of Mini's driving experience modes. So it's supposed to add a layer of interactivity to the driving experience. If I switch to go-kart mode, for example, and accelerate hard, then I'm not entirely sure what that is supposed to sound like, spaceship or something. And there's another mode called Timeless, and if I switch to that, then the central display becomes a retro dial, and the noise is supposed to sound quite similar to the 1959 original Mini, although I'm not sure it really does. It sounds pretty contrived, and on a mountain road like this, after a while, it can make you feel slightly ill actually. So I think I'm going to switch that off. What about ride comfort? Well, we are on some pretty smooth roads here, certainly compared with back in the UK, but I can tell you that it's got pretty stiff suspension. That's obviously why it's fairly sharp to drive by small electric car standards, but it's not uncomfortably crashy, and really, ride comfort has never been a key Mini strength. They're good enough in that respect, but really they do prioritise handling over ride comfort, and it's the same story with this new one. When you slow down as you enter a village like we are now, you'll find the new electric Mini pretty smooth to drive. There's a predictable response to accelerator pedal inputs. The brakes also, they're very easy to judge by electric car standards. Sometimes when you squeeze the pedal, it can be quite grabby, it can be quite difficult to judge how much pressure you need to apply to slow down smoothly, but that's not the case here at all. They are in fact very, very well judged. And that brings me on to two good and two bad things about the new electric Mini. It seems to be pretty efficient. So far, we've been seeing just over 4 miles per kilowatt hour when we've been driving fairly gently. Now, we will of course be putting it through our more scientific real range test when we get hold of one of these back in the UK later this summer, but so far, pretty promising. And the second thing, well, as I said earlier, this is pretty good fun to drive. But what isn't so good? Let me pull over and show you. They probably won't surprise you, to be honest. So the first one is rear space. This is a 3-door only, as I said earlier, so getting in the back to begin with is a bit of a challenge. You have to pull this strap, wait for the seat to slide forward, and then contort your way in. And when you're back here, you will not find much space at all. Now, I am just over 6 foot, and this seat in front is set up for my driving position, but as you can see, not very much knee room at all. Although, on the plus side, headroom is significantly better than it was in the previous generation Mini Electric. Overall, though, there are far more practical small electric cars to choose from. The second bad thing also relates to practicality, and probably won't surprise you either, because it's the boot. So, it's about the same size as the one in the previous generation Mini Electric, 210 litres of space here, and yes, there is a height adjustable boot floor, but really, if you put that in its highest setting, that only makes the boot even smaller. But really, practicality has never been a key Mini strength, has it? And there's a lot to like about this car. It's good to drive, it has a much better range than the previous generation Mini Electric, and although it's quite expensive, particularly when you start adding packs and personalising your car, it should help make up for that by holding onto its value very well indeed. If you've enjoyed this video and you want to watch another one, click there. And if you want to read our full detailed written review of the new Mini Electric, click there. Now I'm going to go and get dry.